Okay, so this week's topic is being versus doing. Jay Baba all, I'm back from a crazy hiatus. Lovely Peter took on the role of host the past few weeks, but I am back and looking forward to reconnecting with all of you. Jeff has done a similar topic to this, but in different wording. I believe he called it the balance of masculine and feminine on the path. I hope to dive into that, but from a slightly different angle. Masculine energy achieves, initiates, and pushes us forward along the spiritual journey. Feminine energy is what allows us to be, receive, feel, and hold space for others. So how do we know when we need to lean into one more than the other? Life with Baba can be a beautiful whirlwind. As the avatar of the age, he puts us on a speed track to him. He is always sending us circumstances that propel us in his direction. When this happens, it can be easy for our humanness to kick in and identify with the path as overly masculine, goal-oriented process. I can at least say this is my own experience. Have you felt the same? That sometimes it can be hard to sit, be, and receive his love because we feel there is a new triumph to conquer to get us closer to him. Masculine energy is absolutely necessary, but without the equally integrated qualities of the feminine, we lose the ability to be in the present moment where he is eternal. The ability to be is what holds space for connection, devotion, and the ability to help and support others. How are we to know when Baba wants us to lean into the being state or when it is time to dive first into the change he is bringing into our lives? Can we get stuck in one or the other? Do you oscillate back and forth between being too much in your own stagnation or doing too much in pursuit of some perceived spiritual goal? Is your pursuit of that goal taking you out of the moment and creating disconnection from others? Or is your connection to others in denial of your own need for expansion, not allowing you to get closer to him? How do you catch yourself in these moments? We are the whole journey, beginning, middle, and end. How do we learn to never look outside of ourselves for the answer, but create that inner longing to dive deeper into him within ourselves? Can we do this while still maintaining connections to the people who are walking the journey simultaneously? Isn't the goal for the being and the doing to exist together in harmony, allowing Baba to dictate which one will lead the way in the eternal? I'm looking forward to what this topic brings, as it's quite juicy. In his love, Margi and Peter. So I'm really excited about this topic because I know when Jeff did it, he did masculine and feminine. I think there was so much there, and it was a very metaphysical topic. So I thought maybe breaking it down by being and doing would make it a little bit more tangible instead of like, oh, what is feminine energy? What is masculine energy? But the balance is really where we want to be on the path, but it can be really easy to get stuck in one or the other. So I guess we got Ken, who's jumping first. I'm glad he's got his hand up.
Yeah, because I don't.
Oh, wait, you just muted yourself, Ken.
But someone else muted me, maybe. Double unmuted. I'm on now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay. Well, number one, it's like, Margi, you said it all in the email, so what's to say? No, really, I mean, you just really laid it out so well, and getting to that place of just trusting the intuition, I just thought of the Mondli. I don't think they necessarily thought of it one way or the other. It was being in the moment and allowing that moment to be what it needed to be, whether how active or passive it was at that moment. And but first I thought we were going to play Where in the World is Margi Connor? But tonight, I guess you're back in Arizona?
I'm back in Arizona.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm back in Arizona.
Well, welcome back.
Thank you.
But I'm sure someone else has some more interesting things to say.
Yeah, does anybody have anything they want to jump out with? This topic I'm particularly passionate. I wanted to call it like masculine and feminine, but I also wanted it to be more digestible and not really. I think that sometimes it can be like men against women, and I didn't want to create that at all because we all have equal parts in us. And I mean, my own work in my life, I'm an astrologer, but I have created this whole part of astrology called feminine astrology, and it's not about, you know, doing like making people like women all, but it's about finding the feminine in everybody, and how really that when you're able to do that, it creates connection to others more than just that connection to yourself. So I'm excited to see where this goes. All right, we have Tony.
Hi, just the brief thing that it occurred to me that we have to learn how to walk and chew gum at the same time. You know, we have to the keeping the inner connection with Baba, and ideally to hearing his guidance in whatever way that a whisper of a thought even comes to you, and then acting on it, so that the mind and the body are serving the inner guidance. And it's easy to then get caught up in the doing and lose track of the inner guidance. Or you could just sit around and meditate all day and not put it into action, get the guidance and not put. So we have to learn to walk and chew gum at the same time to get the balance between the two.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thanks, Tony.
All right, Josh.
Yeah, hey. Yeah, this one's an interesting one because as some of you know, I've had since Christmas I've had long COVID, so which is basically just extra fatigue, and so basically just had to spend a lot of time on the couch a lot more than normal. And so yeah, a lot of days I'm just having to do things on the couch, which is which can be really difficult. So yeah, so it's interesting. I've sort of been forced to get into more of the being kind of modality. And it does remind me, because I think it's tempting to think that Baba was all about telling people to do things, but I think it was Donkin who he just told to just like sit in a room, and then Donkin was just going nuts sitting in this room, like destroying the furniture and things, because his spiritual activity was just being, not the doing. So I think it's a mistake to think doing is everything on the spiritual path. And so that's what I'm trying to rephrase my little time on the couch. It's interesting when you're talking about the masculine and feminine stuff, like particularly for me, because like I can feel my feminine side so strongly, being like sort of like a queer man, and then also like I remember as a child, like I think I would have been 2 or 3 years old, and asking my parents, when I grew up, will I be a man or a woman? And they said, oh, you'll be a man. And I mean, it wasn't unpleasant, but it was shocking to hear. Like that was so unexpected. I was like, what? That's so weird. And to me, that was like, that's such a weird concept, and still to this day, I'm really in touch with my feminine side. I love getting in drag. It's so great. But yeah, I think that definitely there's much to be said about the balance. Again, the Baba's always going on about the balance, but yeah, so basically I'd love to hear people's advice on how to cultivate the being rather than doing, because I tend to be like, oh, I'm only progressing if I'm doing, and I tend to give myself lots of to-do lists, but maybe instead I need lots of to-be lists. So yeah, I'd love to hear some inspiration from other people if they've got any of it or an experience. But yeah, that's the baton. I'll pass the baton on. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Josh. I think you bring up a good point, that it's like, oh, how do we just be? And that's even approaching being from an achieving, doing mentality. Like, oh, I'm going to be for this amount of time. Someone told me this story that when the Western women Mandali were, the Eastern women Mandali were with the Western Mandali on the tour of America, and the Western Mandali were like doing all these things all day. And Mara, I forget which one, but she asked them, she said, why do you do this? Why do you keep yourself so busy? And, I wish I remember who it was. I want to say it might've been Margaret Krask, but she said, oh, this is just what we do. Like, we just do things all day. And Mara had a very confused look on her face and was just like, yeah, that's not really how we do things. We spend a lot more time just being. And it's so interesting because Baba's like life with Baba was so action oriented. I mean, they were traveling all over and they were doing so much, but they also had so much play and joy and sitting around. And even, I mean, Baba made them rest. Yeah, there were plenty of times that especially the men Mandali didn't sleep, you know, because they were on tours with Baba. But then it also, when you read stories, especially I'm reading Mara Meher right now, and it's like there was so much downtime. You know, they had their tasks, but they also rested a lot. Like they rested in the afternoon. And I think the doing is where we kind of, it's almost like we have this container that we have to carve out and make room for Baba. So in the doing moments, we're carving it out, but in the being moments is when Baba comes down and fills it up. And so if we're constantly carving this empty box out and making it bigger, it's not being filled with his love. And so the being moments are when we realize that, oh wait, he's in here. He's inside of us. So I guess just to kind of get some hands up, what does like being on the spiritual path look like to you? And what does doing, or what, you know, what does masculine versus feminine look like in the spiritual realm? Am I gonna have to call on somebody? I'm gonna ask Shri. Shri, can I get your take?
Sure.
You had those eyes. I could tell you had some thoughts in there.
Yeah, I had some thoughts. I don't know how to verbalize them fully, but on the being versus doing and balancing that, I find myself, and like this is a personal struggle, but I'll go through waves where I'm like, I don't want to do anything other than like think about Baba and think about all this stuff and, you know, go sit on the beach somewhere and do nothing. And then I'll have other waves where I, to be very candid, like do not really think about spirituality much. Or it's more so like I'll think about it, but then I'll be looking forward to whatever like worldly thing I'm doing, whether it's work or hanging out with people or whatever. And I've found that in both situations, the thing that helps me get grounded, and helping kind of like that balance between being and doing is realizing that only whatever moment that I'm experiencing exists. And that's like the only reality that I have. And so if you look at it that way, then both those things are kind of the same. Because even when I first started talking, like that's now technically in the past. And so like this current moment is the only thing that really exists in like, from like an absolute truth perspective. And I don't know if that makes sense, but it helps me ground myself when I'm really sad about something or when I'm really happy about something either. So that's kind of how I balance the being versus doing. I don't even know if that answered the question. But I honestly like the masculine feminine thing was very interesting to me. And I honestly don't have I had never really thought about it that way before. So I thought this topic was very interesting, but I don't have a point of view on it yet.
No, I think what you said is really beautiful. I mean, Ken also kind of made a good point that it's like, if you follow your intuition, then you really don't have any of these dynamics playing out, but we're human. And so it's often that we kind of get lost. And I mean, I know I struggle with, I can get in modes of being very action oriented and feeling like I have to go achieve and do all this stuff. And then I'm like, I don't want to get out of my bed. And I feel so comfy, but then I'm not actually bringing Baba's love into the world. So balancing it is very difficult, right? All right.
Diane and Terry have their hand up. Diane.
I'm solo tonight. I lost my wife.
Where's your blushing bride?
She's having dinner with some work friends.
Aw.
She left me with you and the NBA basketball game. I'm not complaining.
Oh yeah, it's not a bad night.
First of all, I want to say Ron Greenstein, we got to do Zoom in this past weekend. We got to actually meet from Zoom to human, and it was wonderful. And hi, Ron. I'm of so many minds on what you've been talking about. I think I just keep getting thrown off by trying to put it in the masculine, feminine category. When I think of Baba, I think that he had both, so much so, and he surrounded himself with such a nice combination of masculine and feminine. I've been kind of focusing on the beings versus doing. I'm a task-oriented person, and probably every performance review I've ever gotten in my professional life, it basically said, stop trying to check things off the list. Stop going so fast. And that's my doing. That's really doing instead of being. And today, one of my partners in crime at work said, take a breath, go slow. And that is a real spiritual place to be. Take a breath, go slow. Because inaction can maybe, be shooting myself in the foot, it sometimes feels. But, I'm probably in the last 1 or 2 years of my professional career, and I think it's time to take a breath and go slow. That feels very spiritual to me. And a lot of times in the workplace, especially, that masculine and feminine energy can be used against people instead of positively. But I don't think I want to talk about work. I think we're talking about spirit. So I'm going to be quiet for now. Thank you.
There is no realm that the spiritual path does not reach, Diane.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Peter. Move on.
Thank you, Diane. Ron has his hand up. Go ahead, Ron. Oh, you want to click on mute again? I think when I clicked it, you clicked mute. You want to click on mute again? You're muted.
Well, let's try it again.
That's
How about
better.
that?
Perfect. You got it.
So the thing that was coming to me about this doing and being was something I find very important in the path to grow closer to Baba, which is needs versus wants. And I find that if I can focus on my doing to needs and pare it down and have less wants, then I'm much happier just being. So it kind of leads into being by doing what needs to be done. And Baba did say, do whatever needs to be done, but do it as a spiritual being. That kind of includes both. So I just wanted to bring up that concept of needs versus wants. See how that plays.
Yeah. That's interesting that because, wants on the spiritual path, we sort of think of as, bad, but you could also say that wants are more masculine and needs are more feminine. But yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna have to sit on that. So thanks for putting that out there, Ron.
Sure.
All right.
All right, we have Josh.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a good one. It's breaking attachments to things that I don't need can be really helpful. I think that's very, very powerful. It's hard. It's hard. Letting go of what I want, and I want so many different things. Yeah, it's interesting. God, I had something else I was going to say, but it's just disappeared from my mind, but that's all right. Needs and wants. How do I find out what's the need? How do I find out what's the want? Because one part of my brain tricks myself into believing a want is a need, and it feels like the other part does the vice versa. And I'm just like, it's like a cat and a dog chasing each other around inside of me. So that's another conundrum. Again, probably just going back to the intuition and my internal compass to decide which spiritual endeavor, which way I should go. And oh yes, I remember what I forgot. I stress myself out a lot often, thinking I need to do this, I need to do that. But then a really great quote that I like to sort of like rest in and think about is that I think that a lot of people look over this Baba quote when towards the end of Baba's life, he said, "My work is completed 100% to my satisfaction." And so often, like I'll be like getting like hung up, I'll be like, "Oh no, I'm not performing well for Barbara. I'm not doing this or whatever is, it's like, oh, I could have been more spiritual in that moment." But I'm forgetting that everything for the next 700 to 1400 years is arguably 100% to his satisfaction because, of how he's programmed it and played it, And Ken just said that great quote as well, where he'd tell people, "I don't need any of you to do my work. I do my work alone." And so I think this is another good quote and tally for the argument that it's important to just be instead of overdo, do. Yes.
Josh, that's so beautiful. You really hit home there, I think. And also you touch on something that we often think we have to do Baba's work and we're so important, and whatever work we're going to do for Baba, it's like, oh, I'm so special because I do that. And I think that that's really where we get off course, because we're identifying with what we have to do to keep an identity, when, like you just said, Baba doesn't need us. It's when we are like rested in the highest version of ourselves are we actually able to be used by him to his satisfaction. When we're like shells of human beings because we're not rested, and the being state is really what allows us to be rested and connected to that intuition and hear that because it's quiet. Then when we go and do for him, we can bring that essence out into the world. So Josh, thank you so much for bringing up that point.
All right, Marion.
You say to be used by Baba, but Erich would say to be used up by Baba. No, anyway.
All right, Marion. You want to click on mute?
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm inspired by everybody, so I'll try to keep this concise because it's really a sharing. And that is, thank you, Ron, for bringing up about needs and wants, because last year, in reading what Baba said, I think in the discourses, I will not fulfill any of your wants, but I will fulfill every real need. And Baba emphasized in the discourses, you have to dig around for that. It's not just easy coming up with all the needs. And I'm a student and practitioner of nonviolent communication, where we have a needs and feelings sheet, and there's like all these 100 needs, in there. And so it does take some poking around to get to my real needs. So, and I understood before that. So I went through the discourses, underlining everything about needs and wants, and that helped me a lot. And some years ago, I did a workshop with some people where we learned that our wants, not to give up the wants, but let them be awaken the heart. They awaken the heart chakra, the wants. I want this. I want a red Vespa to ride around the backcountry roads on. And I want to go to the Grand Canyon because I've never been there. And I want to go to Paris and sit at one of the cafes and have a coffee. So I did this whole long list. I still have this list. And then we took each one and put an equal sign to what's the real need. It might be adventure. It might be whatever it is. And it was wonderful because that really taught me to take all those wants and not throw them away, but open my heart to what my real needs are and do a little bit of that digging around. So one of the things that a book that I'd read years ago, I forget the author, but there were 3 little booklets, he, she, and they. It was about the masculine and feminine, and then bringing them together. And I was always about the doer, because I came in programmed to be with a family in the Midwest that came out of the Depression, very hardworking family. Not much, like nobody hugging me and saying, "Hey, you're so beautiful and come, let's sit and be quiet." We did some things that were quiet, going fishing and jumping in the Mississippi River and certain things like that. But basically, the thread that ran through everything was hard work. Hard work will get you there. So I have to make an effort to balance that even today. So I know the things that take me into the moment. As Baba said, nature and the arts, the most direct connection to the divine. So I'm in New York City. So I have to put in my to-do list, go outside to Central Park and sit on a rock and play Begin the Beguine on my harmonica. And I have to put in my to-do list, lie down and do my my quiet meditation, because I have been so programmed to be the doer and getting things done and dusting and cleaning and all of that. So, but I have more and more in my repertoire, my sketchbook or my harmonica, or I take my other instruments out to the park and sit there and look at the squirrels and the birds and go bird watching. So I've had to learn a lot, and I'm grateful, but I really do still have to be mindful about that balance. So thank you.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Marion.
Yeah, really, really well said, Marion.
All right. And Marion, maybe at the end of tonight, you can play Begin the Begin for us on your harmonica. We would love
That's what I was hoping, actually. I was thinking the same thing.
We would love to hear that. All right, Shri.
Marion, I love that you just said that, because it's very similar to what I was just about to say. When you look at like needs versus wants, so I moved to a new city after college last summer, and it was a new city where I like didn't know anyone here, and like my work is like stressful and the hours are long, so like mentally was not doing well for a really long time, I would say. And I think it only really got better a few months ago. And that entire time, I was always just like dreading being present here. And in my head, I was always like, oh, I can't wait to go back to India, and I can't wait to go back to Myrtle Beach. Because in my head, I thought if I was in India or if I was in Myrtle Beach, then like everything was like magically fixed. And Jeff, it was actually you that said something that was very powerful or impactful to me. And you said that I only feel better at Myrtle Beach or Maribod because the veil of illusion in those places is a lot thinner than it is in Atlanta, but Baba's presence doesn't change in either place. And so I realized the need in my head, I thought, was to live in Myrtle Beach or visit India for a month, but the true need was actually just a feeling of inner peace and stillness, because there was so much going on in my mind all the time, and I felt like I was drowning in all my thoughts, and nothing really helped me. And I would read Baba, I would say his name before I went to bed, or I was trying to fall asleep, but nothing helped me like going to Piedmont Park, which is like Atlanta Central Park, and just sitting on a bench and looking at the trees, or sitting by the pond and looking at the ducks. And I think I sensed a deeper sense of stillness within the nature around me, and that really helped me connect back to that feeling of being, where all you can think about and see is simply what's in front of you. And honestly, I think that's one of the reasons why Myrtle Beach is so special, because the nature there is just phenomenal. And obviously Baba's presence there is, like, words don't do it justice, but also just living in like those cabins, and life just feels very simple, and it's all very relaxing, as I'm sure you all know. But on that note, I think when you're thinking about being versus doing, and a lot of times I'll like beat myself up over it if I'm like, oh, like I had like my mind on a bunch of worldly things this past week, where I was just like focused on this job or whatever. And I'll think to other points in my life where I was like, oh, last summer I was like so much better mentally. But I think a lot of times I forget that I was like, Baba was flowing through me in both those situations. And he loves both those versions of me equally. And I think that helps me a lot when I'm feeling guilty about something or nervous or anxious. And so I think whether it is being or doing, one thing that I've always struggled with is being annoyed with myself for like a lack of progress at times or too much attention on the material world. But then I have to remember Baba made me do that for a reason. Maybe next time my approach to how I come towards something, whether it's a new job or a new place that I'm living in, will be different because I learned from this current experience that I'm living through.
Wow, so beautiful. I really want to piggyback on what you're saying because I just went through a very similar scenario, but I want to let the other people go first. So we'll circle back. But Sri, that was so beautifully said because it's true. We get attached to what we think we need and we kind of get disconnected from what Baba knows we need. And so he has to bring us back and forth and all over until we realize that he's right here in the moment. And that's so beautiful because I think a lot of Baba people spend most of their life thinking that they're not happy because they're not in Maribot or they're not in Myrtle Beach. And so you got it early. That's beautiful.
All right, Jeff. Jeff, you want to click unmute?
Well, you got Diane, I think.
Yeah. Diane had her hand up.
Okay. I was gonna say Diane went already, but all right.
No, I asked him to call on you first, Jeff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
Age
Yeah.
before beauty, you know.
Okay. I'm going to just say a couple of things, but later on I'll check in. But there are a couple of things that I thought were rather interesting. Kind of going on what Sri was saying about, India and the center. There was a lady that was here recently, but several trips back as she was leaving from Portland, Oregon, one of her friends said, "What do you do at that center?" And she said, "You don't have to do a thing. It takes you all day to do it, and you barely have time to get it done." That's kind of what the center's about. And even India, I'm over there in India and I just don't have enough. For me, I don't even have enough time to get what to get this thing done. But what is it that is trying to get done? Even that I don't know. There's never enough time in India, and I'm not doing a thing but just kind of loitering and wandering around. But anyway, here's something that Bao told me that I liked. It made a significant impression on me. But Bao Kalchuri, as you know, he would go over and be with Baba from 6 p.m. until about, I don't know, 5 a.m. Then he'd go get a couple hours sleep, and then he'd have to go to Mandalay Hall. And Baba then would have him doing correspondence, and he'd have to look after the dog sometimes. He had a lot of little jobs, but he was hardly getting any sleep. And on top of that, Baba asked him one day to look after Gustaji, to answer to his needs. Now, Gustaji didn't do a thing. And this is what he would do. Gustaji, one of Baba's oldest disciples, Mandalay there, he would spend all week gathering paper, scraps of paper and twigs and everything. And he would, so that he could heat his bath water. And then on Friday, he would take a bath the entire day, tying up the bath stall. And Bao said that he would bathe himself from his hand to his elbow, soaping it down and everything, and then pour water that. Then he'd go from his elbow to his shoulder, and he'd spend a half hour washing that. And, just body part by body part. And so Baba has saddled him with looking after Gustaji, and he's really not doing anything all day. But he didn't say anything to Baba, but it was aggravating him. And one day Baba
kind of said, well, everything all right? And Bob said, yeah, everything's all right. And are you sure? And everything. Baba got it out of him. Said, Baba, you have me doing so many things from morning to night. And then you asked me to look after Gestaji for his meals and his clothing and all that. And he is really not doing anything all week, He's so, but this is what Baba said to him, and this made a deep impression on me. Baba says, Gestaji does more for me in 5 minutes doing nothing than you do in working for me from morning till night. What kind of world is that? Gestaji does more for me in 5 minutes, this stupid stuff that he's doing, than you do for me working from morning till night. So it is not what we thought. The Western consciousness just doesn't work over in that world. Anyway, that was just, I have something later I'll say, but I thought I'd just throw that out.
Yeah, great story, Jeff. Thank you.
And Diane?
I have a couple things to say. I was thinking about you, Jeff, because we just were in I always call it Marana,
Oh, God.
the harvest. And we're thinking about the high you feel, that's Sahavas high. And I realized you have the India Sahavas high every day. You get to see Baba lovers come in. It must fill your heart so much. So that end of sentence on that. My one child, our one child is she all of a sudden I've lost my ability to speak English. They go by they. And one of the main reasons, if you saw them, they dress quite feminine. They do their hair up, they put makeup on, the whole bit. But they don't want to be boxed in. That is the whole concept. Put it as easy as it possible why somebody does not want to be called a he or a him or a she or a her. It's excruciating as parents to try and get out of the habit of referring to my daughter or she or her. And that's our lesson to do a lot of work to make sure that we acknowledge our child and see them in the way they want to be seen. It's one of the best gifts we could ever give them. So when I think about, it might have been why I have a hard time with the masculine and feminine, because I'm on this new train of thought about it doesn't matter. And it just boxes you in when you label it. So there you have it.
Thank you, Diane. Marcia, I noticed you had your hand up. Did you want to say anything?
Yeah, I guess so. I was going to change my mind about talking. For 2 days, I binge watched Hulu, and I wanted to get up and do stuff, and I just kept watching and watching, and then I slept through doing a Zoom thing where I was supposed to teach an art class. And then I went in the closet and turned on the light, and the light blew out. And I said, uh-oh, Bob was really ticked, because I messed up. And then I started thinking about it. And I said, I didn't mess up. I didn't really have to do anything. And he was trying to tell me, just don't think so much and just listen to me and stop thinking about, ritual and doing this and doing that and just be natural. That's what he wants us to do. And it felt pretty good. And then I was laying there on the couch and I thought about something that I was really comfortable. And I said, oh, I'm going to get up and take care of this, because I remember what he says, that it's important to think of others before you think of yourself. So there's so many messages, and, you don't have to be so hard on yourself if you mess up. And you just have to listen to that voice inside, because he's not, I was really blown out after coming back from Myrtle Beach for 5 months and settling into Chicago. And I'm like, oh, I want to run away and leave. And then I started saying, well, I really do like it here and I'm getting used to it. And then it's just a different life, but it's not any different. Baba's not any different. if you're with him in India or China or anywhere, because he's your Baba, your God, you know. That's the whole deal of God realization. And so you realize that all this is a bunch of illusion, and you don't have to be so hard on yourself and beat yourself to death. Baba doesn't want that. He just wants you to, when he says something, to listen and obey. That's the main number one. I remember Baba, I obey Baba, I serve Baba, I love Baba, and surrender. And that's what he wants, is when you surrender to him, then you're saying, I have total faith that Baba is the avatar of the age. And then after that, you don't have to be worrying about all this shit. Excuse me. It's because you're free. You know, like we put ourselves, I'm here in my house in Myrtle, I wake up and sometimes I don't know, am I in India, am I in Myrtle Beach, am I in my house? And I could be anywhere. I can keep a suitcase in my car, and I'm free to go we're free to go wherever we want. We just make ourselves into this box. Like, I have a friend who won't leave her house because I don't know why. Why are you staying in your house? You know, there's a whole world out there. And like, sometimes I'll go days and I'm not going outside. The last couple of days I said, wow, why haven't I been going outside? You know, so I just go outside, you know. And if you feel like laying on your couch all day, then lay on your couch, you know. Just make sure you eat. Jai Baba.
Thank you, Jai Baba. I'm glad you shared. I'm glad you spoke up. I wanted to touch on something Diane said too, which is, I mean, there's a whole movement in the world right now, which is really like, you know, the non-binary and not fitting into gender norms and all of this. And I mean, I don't know anything about what Baba's plan is. Like, I mean, I know as much as you guys do, but even if you look at Baba's Mandali, and I personally really think of Mani as the perfect example of this, is Mani was obviously female, but she was such a perfect balance of masculine and feminine, right? And I mean, that was before the time that we had, you know, she, him, her, they, all these different, you know, gender identities. But really, like, when I think about Mani and even Erich, they were this perfect balance that didn't really, like, I wouldn't say that Erich was masculine and Mani was feminine. Mani was equally feminine and equally masculine, and same with Erich. I mean, I think Mara is a different story. To me, Mara is divinely feminine because that's her role. But the women Mandali had a strength within them that comes from that masculine energy. It's not necessarily, oh, you're a man, you're a woman. It's the balance. And I think that this whole gender movement in the world is really that balancing out of that masculine and feminine, so that we all have it inside of us. Okay, go ahead, Jeff. You're muted.
Okay. No, what you said is excellent. I always felt Erich and Mani were a near balance of a balance of those two qualities. And one way I kind of look at this, don't quite know how to talk about it, but there's a Japanese expression, to read the air. You come into a situation and you read the air. Now, ideally we have 360 degrees of awareness in every moment, but you know, sometimes we have just, you know, 40 degrees or whatever. The more awareness that we have as we come into a moment, we kind of then love rather than our belief systems and our ideas and ideals, but love itself, our intuition, like Ken was saying in the beginning, it prompts what to do. And it might be something assertive, which we kind of call masculine, but it might be receptive. You might listen to somebody's story, or you might you might share something, you know, you might intervene, or you might let something just happen. But I find that I have to wait till love weighs in. I have my ideas of how I should behave. I mean, Erich was really on my case about making a distinction between good and love. Because love, you know, you just take love off the shelf and you just apply it to a situation. And it's never as pure and as love itself and spontaneous. It's kind of like it's a calculated action, you might say, even at the highest stage. But love kind of knows how to work these things out, how to respond to a situation, but how to liberate love from all of our ideas, all of our beliefs, so that love can assert itself or be receptive. Jane Brown and I used to talk about the masculine and feminine, the masculine being kind of goal-oriented. I mean, masculine side of us, goal-oriented, and the feminine is relationship-oriented. That's how we used to talk about it. And if you're going across the country in a car with the kids, the husband is making sure that they're on the road, they got gas and they got the map and everything. And the wife is in there trying to create harmony with the kids inside the car, you know what I mean? But both sides are if they get on the extreme, if you're just masculine or just feminine, if it's just masculine, you would never get to your destination. I mean, if it was just feminine, you wouldn't get to your destination, so to speak. If you're just masculine, you'll get to your destination, but you won't have any fun. Everybody be at each other's throats. I mean, I'm speaking very simplistically, but to be fluid as far as how to respond to a situation. Someone said to Erich, I remember in Mandalay Hall, how do I know if what I'm doing is pleasing to Baba or displeasing to Baba? How can we know that? And Erich said, love would never ask that question. To separate self-interest from love. Anyway, that's a couple of things that occurred to me.
Something I just wanted to say is Josh, you put a comment in the chat, and I actually used this quote in my workshops, but Baba said that male and female incarnations are equally as important on the path. So you can't get to God without female and male incarnations. I just wanted to clarify that. But yeah, Jeff, thank you so much for sharing that.
One last thing is, I remember Erich saying is that the masculine will get you to the door of the beloved, but the feminine, with the feminine, you embrace the beloved. In other words, you need the masculine to get through all the temptations and get there. But once you get there, it's your feminine side that embraces Bob. That's another way he put it.
All right, I think Peter went to bed for the night. So we got Diane.
So I have a question. It feels like a puppy dog Baba kind of question, but Baba said Mara was the purest of them all, and he wouldn't allow any masculine energy except for his to be in her life. That almost sounds like masculine energy is toxic. That would taint the pure. Thank you, Josh. Thank you for getting what I mean. I mean, what do you think?
Let me just mention that we after we all hung around Mara, guys, as well as women, but during the work that Baba was doing with the women, she was kept kind of separate. But after Baba dropped his body, we were able to hang out and be with her.
Right.
As you know, with our terrible toxic vibes. No.
Why did he keep her separate?
So go ahead, Jeff.
Oh, I wrote a whole thing about this. How can I say? Without going into the whole story, but Upasi Maharaj said that he had 70 some nuns around him. And what they would do, he said, these women, they seem like they're all secluded, but the heavy vibrations of the world are being drawn here And these women transmute that into spiritualize the heavy vibrations of the world. So it's not like they're behind closed doors. They're actually receiving the heaviness of the world. Uh-oh. Something happened. Anyway, they're receiving the heaviness of the world and they're transmuting it. And so Baba kept a very pure atmosphere for that particular work during his lifetime. Does that make sense? I mean, there's a whole thing I wrote up about it that explains that thing.
Diane, I actually have this, so
Yeah.
I forget what the name of the book is, but it's very similar to what Jeff's saying. It's a very small excerpt that I want to share with everybody, but it's kind of answering that question. It was Baba's way, and as said to be the practice of all the perfect masters, to work out in their lifetimes on a small scale models for developments which will later become worldwide. Throughout his life, Baba constantly emphasized the importance of women and the values particularly associated with her: love, tenderness, service to others, stressing them not as something to be demanded of a woman by a man for his enjoyment or advantage, but as qualities he must value in her and develop within himself. So in bringing the groups together with such patience and determination, Baba was, perhaps for all attempts to interpret are only guesswork, achieving three aims at the same time, among perhaps many others. He was sowing the seeds of a unity between the East and the West. He was stressing the importance of women for the coming age, and he was helping to develop a pattern of what kind of woman she would be, one who holds talent, energy, and the practical capacity of the Westerners would be blended with the devotion and spirituality of the women Mandali. Women have to be liberated, not in order to become man's imitation or enslaver, but to become something new, something more than she has ever been till now, and in doing so, to inspire men to become more than he ever thought he was capable of being. Her role, following that of Baba himself, is to awaken.
What's that from, Margi?
It's, oh shoot, Elisa sent it to me. It's shoot. I'll text her and find out, but it's from a book of basically, I forget who it was, but somebody sort of almost like interpreted and, took a bunch of stuff from Baba's life and put it all together. But I thought that was so beautiful because, we live in a world where the masculine is much more emphasized and celebrated. And so, perhaps this separation of marrow was not to say that masculine is toxic, but that, the masculine has to become more like the feminine to be empowered beyond what it even thinks it's capable of. Jeff, you're muted.
Mara said that all of the people from the gas chambers from the Holocaust came through the upper room, meaning they came through Marabad. So what were the women doing in that atmosphere? There was one woman who from Colorado who had a past life recollection in which she saw herself and all the people in the gas chambers being gassed and dying and huddled together saying prayers. And after they died, they were lifted up and carried all together. And they for a while they were above this beautiful hillside, and there were some little buildings, and from below there was chant coming up that was so healing. And then they went on to the next phase of existence. And then when that woman became a Baba lover, she went to Marabad and signed in. And when she was going up the hill, she realized this is the hill we were all brought to from the concentration camp.
Wow.
And when she came up to the tomb, the women mandali happened to be at the tomb that day, singing the very chant that they heard after they came from the concentration camp, the 7 names of God, which Baba had the women mandali singing in the morning and in the evening. So they were busy at work, but I think they kept a very purified atmosphere because of the heaviness that they had to transmute of the world. Anyway,
Beautiful, yeah.
that's
Thank
the
you,
whole
Jeff.
thing.
Diane, did that answer a little bit of what you were asking? Yeah. Okay. A little bit. She's still working on the rest. Does anybody, where's some more hands? Am I gonna have to start calling on people? Tony, this is the quietest I've ever seen you.
Really?
Yeah,
Is that so?
yeah.
No, I'm just being quiet and responding like that. Never mind.
You're just being, right?
I'm just, I don't, I'm not, I have experience of all these subjects of wants and needs and of being and doing and masculine and feminine. And I'm in a very different place now, and it's sort of, it connects with doing. It's been a stressful year in many ways, physically and mentally, but Baba has come to me in many powerful ways, internally, externally, and I've had like among the most blissful inner experience. Something last week where I was like just feeling it all coming down and coming through me, and realizing I can do. One of them was something that Mani said to me, "Thank you for making it all happen." When I really, when I entered that group in New York when I was 18, Baba group that got weird, I saw the weirdness and I made a commitment quietly to myself that I will bring Baba's love here and not let the craziness go on. And in the end, my leaving broke up the group. And I think that's what Mani was talking about. But it was Baba saying, don't, thank you for making it all happen. And I couldn't accept that I had made something happen. And it came up and she repeated it to me and would just like, get this, and with that tone. And I got that Baba is telling me even now, there are certain things that I need to do and they seem overwhelming. And I hear Mani saying, thank you for making it all happen. And I'm realizing I can make it all happen. With Baba's grace, I can make it all happen. And after a few days of feeling really empowered and motivated by that, I'm feeling now like, I don't know what to do. It's sort of like following these gifts, being in sort of a dark night of the soul, not so much of suffering, but the suffering in quotes of, where's your guidance? What would you have me do? You want me to do it, I'll do it, whatever it is, I can make it all happen. And so that's kind of a place, at least in my experience, beyond both being and doing. And I don't know what to make of it. That's really why I haven't been sharing, because this is the only thing I could think of. The other is this that wonderful song, Mayor Baba Godman, where it quotes Baba saying, don't do anything while doing everything. And that's really the answer of being and doing. If you're in Baba's, if you're being with Baba, there was another quote, same lines. What I want is inaction amidst intense activity, so that while outwardly you're doing so much, inwardly you're in a still, quiet place with Baba. But for me at the moment, because I think I'm supposed to go through this little bit of a dark night, those just feel like words to me because they're not accessible to me in experience right now. But that is, I think, I don't know, the goal. The goal is that inaction, it's intense activity, not doing anything while doing everything. The mind cannot figure that out at all, but the heart gets what Baba's saying. So, and masculine and feminine, I mean, I have past life memories. I don't have any past life memories as a woman. Maybe one little glimpse of something, but because the current body kind of blocks out that other way of being. And I have to consciously note my wife, other women that I know, to kind of sense there's a different sensibility, there's a different sensitivity, there's a different that I can embody. At the same time, I have to be bold, and Baba said men excel in the qualities of head and will. So those are the things that come easy, being bold and making decisions. But sometimes the decision has to be to really feel why this other person is not happy with what's going on, or how can I do this differently? What's the heart calling for in that? And so it's also a balance. That's more practical, like day-to-day life thing. But like I say, at the moment, I'm feeling disconnected from all of it. Baba. Thank you.
Just wander over to Central Park and hug a tree like Marion does. You'll feel good.
It's not wandering from Kew Gardens, Queens, And they're putting fees on driving into the city now.
Boy. Oh, wow. All right, we have Jennifer up next.
Oops, hold on. I'm here. I'm trying to unmute. Oh, there I am. Okay, sorry about that. So many things have gone through my mind. I got very excited when you sent that email, that being, doing, masculine, feminine, because it just brings so much up. And being someone who does for themselves a lot, I work for myself and all of that, you become a big doer. And that is my inner nature, to be a doer. That's been the way I have found my value earlier in my life. But what I'm finding now is that's when I can find when I don't have that balance. Sometimes I'll think of, as you all were talking, thinking about the being and the doing. The doing to me sometimes feels more like the head, and the being feels like that heart. And with Darwin Shaw talked about that perfect balance of the head and heart. So since COVID, the one thing I really was so great for me was to finally be able to just stop. And even in the time before that, the work I was doing, I felt like it was what Bob gave me to do. But what happened with that work was I got very intense in it, very excited about it. And it turned more into my doing here than my coming from here. And so when it was time for it to be finished, when I knew he said, we're done, it was very hard for me to stop because I was so attached to it. So that's one thing. I really do my best now to listen as much from my heart in terms of what Baba wants me to do. It doesn't happen all the time. I love it when it does, because then I feel like I have a real sense of direction of what I can do for Baba in just all the different aspects of my life. But I can still feel when I kind of take it to the extreme, like, oh, you want me to do this? I'll do it even better or even more, or, and that's when that inner anxiety will take over, that feeling of ego of, look, I'm doing it so well. Those sort of things take over. And what I'm working with now is to notice that, so that I can take a little step back and go, oh yeah, you're doing that thing again. It's so easy to get off to the races and start running away with things, even if it's something that you think you're doing that is his will for you, that is what he gave you as a job, or even something to say or think. So that's what I'm working on. It's always a struggle, that connection. And then I did have a thought about the masculine, feminine, but now I can't remember what it was. Oh, I know. I was thinking about, I noticed with my kids, as obviously they're younger than me, but when they were at school, they would talk about the different kids in school and, the differences in sexuality. One time there was they had some prospective families come to give a talk. And one of the kids who was on the panel, they want the perfect looking kids on the panel, talk about how great the school is. And this one kid, just spoke right up and said he loved his school because he felt like he was able to be authentic and be able to come out to his fellow classmates. And there were people in the crowd who were absolutely shocked. And one of the parents called me and said, "Can you believe it?" And I was like, "Well, I think it's kind of great," which she didn't like. But I talked to my kids about it. And what they said was, "Mom, we don't care. This isn't important to us. How they perceive themselves as masculine, feminine." And so this is the shift, I think, that Baba is bringing in, those qualities of the masculine and the feminine. And sometimes the sexuality and things, that's kind of more of the outward expression that we're seeing. But I just thought it was beautiful that this new generation, this new humanity that's coming in, looks at this differently and looks at all the parts, all the aspects of the being. So I think it's a real positive. Yes, I have friends who think of themselves, who call themselves they, younger than me. And I've really made a concerted effort too. And what I came to was when, the they is the two, the masculine and the feminine. And when I put that together in my mind, it suddenly clicked and it wasn't so difficult for me. And then I thought about, I've been very interested in the Maori, I think that's how you say it. And in Hawaii culture, the Maori, they came from, there's a myth that the Maoris came from another land and came to Hawaii, and they brought these gifts of different ways of healing. And when they described the Maori, and the Maori are still very alive and well in Hawaii, it was the perfect balance of male and female. And so I think about that, and they talked, it was just thought of as being, these people were revered as the gift of having both in this balance and the gifts that they could bring forth because of that. So those are just my thoughts for tonight.
Yeah, thank you so much. You have really great perspectives on both. I mean, we talked about quite a slew of things, but really, really beautiful. Thank you. And I'm glad I loved your email that I got from you. Sorry, I didn't respond.
Oh, no, I didn't expect you to. I just, every now and then I'm like, yes. And I know I've missed a couple. So I'm still with you guys in spirit, but I love coming. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm really glad you shared. I think you also brought up a point that Shri it triggered something in me, and then you just like solidified it, that the doing, a lot of times I think we like to identify things as being hard, because if they're hard, then we're being a good Baba lover, or we're being a good spiritual aspirant because they feel difficult. And kind of from both of what you guys said, it's the doing, if you're really tuned into the being state, is not as hard as it feels. It's much more natural. It's, yeah, of course, we're called to do things that are difficult, and we have to let go. But I think a big part of my own personal journey has been allowing Baba to do the hard things and not seek out the hard things for the sake of self-torture. And with the doing can really force us to over-identify with, oh, I'm a good spiritual aspirant because I'm suffering. And meanwhile, we've gone so off course, and now Baba has to clean our lives up. And we're so mad at him, or at least that was me, of like, oh, why did you do this to me? When it's really not, like, it's not supposed to be that difficult, right? Baba's going to bring difficulty into our lives, so stop searching for it. And if you're living from that being state, the doing comes much more naturally. I think it's, it's kind of like the head and the heart. The heart is meant to lead, but the mind is a necessary tool. The
Mhm.
being is the state that we exist in, and the doing is a necessary tool to bring the being into the world and to get to Baba.
Yeah,
Yes.
we need them both. And
True.
that I just want to say, I'm sorry, I'll say one quick thing that triggered in me. I had an instance where I really depended on Baba, and I was going to go complete a task that I needed to do that I knew was very emotionally painful. And I was very angry about it. And I had played in my mind what I was going to say and how I was going to get it, put this out there, and that this was my opportunity. And I talked to Baba in my car as I'm driving there. What am I going to do? Tell me what to say. But I'm going to say this and this and this. And I got there, I parked my car in front of the building where I was going in to do this task. And I just said, Baba, what do you want me to do? And clear as a bell, I heard, do nothing. So doing, and so I did. I did the do nothing, say nothing. So I went in. I didn't get to say my diatribe, which was the best thing. So sometimes doing, the point is that sometimes doing is doing nothing. It isn't always that kind of action. We think it's, say something, build something, change something. Sometimes it's just being, and through that, Baba talks about working through us. So if we don't have that inner stillness, sometimes he can't transmute the situation, or even kind of help untangle all those sense-charic threads inside of us.
Yes, really beautifully said. Thank you so much. All right, we have Shri up next.
Yeah, going off of what you both were just talking about, a lot of times, like, I think when you first start thinking about your life, like spiritually and all that, and you learn about the path, it very quickly, like, the mind becomes like an enemy in your head. And I don't know if I see some nodding heads, so I'm assuming it's like a agreed upon sentiment. And it always it always blows my mind how at the same time it's so powerful. It has the ability to truly make your day so crappy, or at other times it seems so weak and fragile. And I've always wondered, like, what that shift is, or like why that differs so much. And I think on the days where it feels so fragile, I feel more of like that presence within me, if that makes sense. And on days where I am letting like everything dictate my mood, and the slightest annoyances make me just have an awful day, I realize a lot of it is because of an unacceptance of the present moment, if that makes sense. And Margie, I think this is what you were saying, but a lot of times, like, things that you think you're going to dread are not really that bad when you're living through them, but the mental anxiety and toll that takes on you in the days leading up to that just make you think you're going to have the worst time. And instead of enjoying the beautiful present moment, you're out here thinking about something that's going to happen next week. And I was doing that this weekend. There was something I had to do this week that I was really not looking forward to. Spent a lot of time this weekend dreading it, but then when I actually was doing it, it was fine. And I think I would just love to hear what helps people kind of like snap back into that reality, I guess, when you have to like sit down with yourself and kind of have a talk, like saying all you can do is like exist in this present moment, and you can't control what's going to happen. You can control how you act, but again, that's a lot easier said now, and I'm feeling peaceful and feeling full of love in a lovely Zoom like this, rather than when I'm like alone and it's late at night and you're just like in your head.
Yeah, beautiful. I recently had a client tell me that when they were on our calls, they have a workshop high. And I think that these Zoom calls do a very similar thing. You know, when we're on here, it's like, it's so easy. You just follow your intuition and duh, like that's where Baba is. But then actually applying it to our everyday life is a totally different story. And yeah, so thank you so much for bringing that up. All right, we have Marion up next.
Oh, hi. I didn't realize I had my hand up. But something had been on my mind. I'll make it very short because I'm resonating with everything that everyone's saying. I had mentioned these three books, He, She, and They, that were written many years ago, which I love the metaphor of the distinction between male and female, which is only in the world of duality. And the masculine and feminine is the yin and yang, very different than the duality of men and women. And in the spirit world, there's no men or women. There is the yin and yang. But I love this metaphor he had, that as the masculine of myself, for the integrated, is stepping into the light on a path. Active, it's active. The feminine has the lantern that lights the way, the path for the masculine to step into. And that's the togetherness of the oneness of the yin and yang. Is I always like that image that the masculine, was moving forward, cannot step into that new unless the feminine is lighting the path with the lantern along the way. And I just love that image. It just always stayed with me.
Yeah, so beautiful. A good friend of mine used a very similar analogy, that the feminine is the river and the masculine is the riverbed. And without the structure of the riverbed, the river wouldn't be able to run. Beautiful. All right, we got Ron.
Would it be appropriate if I could tell an anecdote? I doubt that it has anything to do with masculine and feminine, although it involves a man and a woman.
Go for it.
All right. So an interesting thing happened at this wonderful Sahavas that Diane was talking about at Meharana. I was there and enjoyed the atmosphere. And of course, one of my favorite things about the Sahavas is Baba's people. I just love being around Baba's people, and I've been doing it for decades. And this was an opportunity to be around close to 150 people, including a whole bunch of little kids, which is always a joy to see them. And but so I knew a lot of people because it's in the area where I live, and just I've met a lot of people over the years. And so there's some of them I hadn't seen in 30 years, and others I saw last week, and so it was very mixed. But this focuses on this one person who I met maybe about 7 or 8 years ago when she first came to Baba. She's a little older than I am, and but I met her. I heard her story of how she came to Baba in detail at this same Meharana Sahavas years before. And she was a very serious-minded person. Now, here's the thing that happened, is I must have had some kind of a falling out. I wouldn't call it a falling out, but it was like a conflict of ideas that took place on Facebook. And on Facebook, I'm rather outspoken on various things. I have certain things that I want to put out to people and have them think about it. I ask a lot of questions, and but the things that I bring up are pretty controversial sometimes, different than the conventional way of that many people are thinking. And so this woman took issue with me, and it wasn't a very prolonged argument. If it was an argument, I don't even remember exactly what it was, but whatever it was, she seemed to not like me anymore. And The first time I saw her in person, because I moved shortly after meeting her, and she lives in the San Francisco Bay Area where I lived for many years, but now I live out in the boondocks in the country. And but when I saw her, she wouldn't look at me. I just felt like she really didn't want to have anything to do with me. Well, you know, that's not really all that new. When you live 75 years, that's going to happen now and again. And it's definitely happened to me. So, but it, you know, so many of the people that I have had different opinions and conflicts with, they pretty much, I can win them over somehow just by being me. And they're, we don't talk about it. You know, it's left behind. But this woman, I felt it was a different deal, but I was also feeling, well, 1 out of 150, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. I'm pretty happy. I'm going to be happy, Bob. I'm not going to make a big issue out of this thing. But here's what happened. Because if you've ever listened to or read Erich's book, that's how it was. In it, he mentions how Baba can make the possible impossible and the impossible possible. So what happened was, I walked into the cabin where we have the arti at Majorana, and I was a little late. That usually I'm not late, but this time I was late, and there was only a seat on the floor. So I just kind of went right to the floor with my guitar in hand, sat down, and I felt a tap on my shoulder. And I turned around, and it was this woman. And I don't want to use her name. I mean, I feel bad not using, but I don't want to say who it was. But anyhow, she said, she looked at me and she said, "Oh, I haven't said hello to you." And I was like, very happy that she had said that. You know, maybe there was a change of heart or change of mind or whatever, not change of mind, but just change of heart, opening up to me. Anyhow, that was delightful. Then we had the whole RT and the singing and everything, and she was behind me. I couldn't look at her or see her because I was stuffed in this little spot on the floor in front of her. Anyhow, the next morning, she was walking toward the pandal where we have the guests, you know, perform or speak or whatever they're going to do. She was walking, and I was standing right in the entrance, and she was walking toward me because she was going to go in there and get a seat. And something made me feel that I could just say, so how has this been for you? And she started to tell me that, you know, it was this way and that way, but then she really got a little more intimate and told me about some of the things that are going on in her life. I won't really go into that, but just her doing that made me feel very happy that she would be willing to talk to me on that level. And we talked about it a bit. We connected. To me, connection is basically like love. And maybe it is what love is, when you really connect with somebody. And let me just say, if I'm not mistaken, the conflict that we had was around the COVID policies and that kind of whole thing. And she, I could tell, was really she had been wearing a mask when she was in the audience at the during the programs. She wasn't wearing it any other time. I'm not sure why she did that. But what really got me, the end of the story is that just as she was about to walk away, she turned around and she said, "I'll take a hug." And so we hugged and said, "Jai Baba." And then the impossible became quite possible for Baba, who was he knows the magic. Anyhow, that's the anecdote.
Thank you. It's a sweet story. I love it.
Yeah, it's like the feminine one. I mean, in Jane Brown's definition, the feminine is relationship. So that fits in.
Yeah, the feminine.
You know, I thought of what Shri said, a line from Mark Twain where he said, I've been through many trials and tribulations in this life, and most of them never happened. Don't we all know that?
Well, if no one else has anything to share, maybe we can get Marion to play her. You don't have to. If you don't want to, you don't have to. But if you'd be willing to play your Begin the Beguine, I think we
Does
all
it-
know that.
Okay, I'm not going to get out my I have a whole sheet music on it. I'm not going to get all that out. I'll do a shortened version. Does this? I always hesitate because it can sound very tinny. Is that sound okay?
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay. Okay. So you ready?
Mhm.
Ready? Okay. Let's see how it goes. I'll do a little shortened version.
To live it again.
That's it. That's
Thank
it.
you.
That's it.
I kind of like that sped up version. It makes you want to dance a little bit more. Well, this was a great combo tonight, guys. Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Excellent.
Well, I think that's all for tonight. I guess we will close out with 3 Avatar Mayor Baba Ki Jays, and then we will talk next week. All right, if you guys all want to unmute. Avatar.
Avatar,
Mayor
Baba
Ki
Ki
Jai.
Jai.
Avatar.
Avatar, Mayor Baba Ki Jai.
Avatar. Mayor
Avatar, Mayor Baba Ki Jai.
Jay.
Jai Baba. Yay.